There's shocking news coming out of Pakistan at the moment, of course, with the annual monsoons triggering devastating floods this year. At least 1,000 people have been killed, a third of the country is affected, and there's untold damage being done to homes, cities and infrastructure. More than $500 million in foreign aid has been directed to Pakistan already. Much more will need to be found soon. And now, typically, of course, there are plenty in Pakistan and around the world citing climate change already. That's always the case with natural disasters these days. And while this is a terrible disaster, and you'll hear all the usual climate alarmism in most of the media, it is worth mentioning that we saw flooding of this order in 2010 and back in the early 90s and back in 1950. This is the annual monsoon threat that hits that part of the world at this time of the year every year, and sometimes it is catastrophic. It's terrible, we need to help, but playing climate politics with it just distracts people from the real problem at hand and the need to always guard against a natural disaster that's a permanent risk in that part of the world. And why is it important to share this context? Because the alternative, the alarmism, it creates hysteria, it frightens kids and convinces people that we're on the edge of some sort of global apocalypse. And by the way, it also leads to governments taking poor decisions. And while I'm on climate change, let me just bring something to your attention. While Britain and most of Europe struggle through their ongoing energy crisis and they confront a traumatic winter ahead when all the energy supply and price problems will only get worse, it's worth looking at what the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases is doing. China accounts for a third of all emissions, as you know, and unlike us, it's not cutting them, it's still increasing them. And while China is rapidly expanding its renewable energy and nuclear power sources, sure, it's also building more coal-fired generation. It's actually approved the construction of at least 33 gigawatts of coal generation in the last year, which is 3 times what's being built around the rest of the world. Some reports suggest China will expand its coal-fired power generation over the next 3 years by more than all the coal-fired power that's generated in Australia. More than 40 power stations are on the books. In other words, if we shut all our coal-fired power stations over the next 3 years, it would mean nothing to the global environment because China is going to build even more than that, even more than the ones we shut, so that they can have affordable and reliable power. And they used to call us the clever country.